Welcome to the Life Junkie podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Life Junkies podcast, episode 23. This is our Premier League early season preview. Now, I am joined by the most guests I've ever had on the podcast before. People have listened before, so maybe one of you will know Chris Johnson from the Wrestling Podcast. Hello, Chris.
Hi, mate. Good evening.
And I have international superstar musician Liam McKinnon with me. Liam.
Hi, how are you?
Overselling it slightly, but sure.
I wish more people would introduce me like that. That's really cool.
And I also have good friend Chris Eadie. Hello, Chris.
Hiya, Mike. How's it going?
It's good, mate. You?
I'm very good, thanks. Yeah.
Brilliant. So we are here for the very first Life Junkies football podcast. So hopefully we don't make too big interviews of ourselves, otherwise I mess up the intro straight away. I'm going to carry on. So for the intro, I normally like to talk about something that's related to the subject we're going to cover, but not quite the subject. So I wanted to get a little talk going on about VAR or VAR. I know, Chris Johnson, you're not a fan, are you?
No, not at all. It's not something I can get on board with, unfortunately.
What's your particular issue with VAR?
It takes too long. It's taking a bit of the emotion out of the game. It's done primarily for TV audiences, I think. If you're in a stadium, we've seen it happen on so many occasions already. I think if you're a Manchester City fan, you probably wouldn't like it at all. They had knocked out the Champions League because of it last year. They've had goals disallowed this year. Spurs had a goal disallowed at the weekend for being, 2 millimeters? His armpit was 2 millimeters offside. It's just something I don't think works with football. It works in cricket because it's a game where there's delays. It works in the NFL. It works in tennis where games stop. In football, it's just killing atmospheres, and it will get to the point where not every goal, but certain goals, they're checking with the linesmen and referees before they can even celebrate, and that's not what football's about.
I'm not going to profess to be a regular match-going fan. It's not something that's possible for me with my team being quite a few miles away. But I found watching it from TV, I don't think it actually takes away the emotion from it. You just get that stop of, is it, isn't it? I can't remember, it was a Chelsea game recently where they had a long VAR stoppage. And I felt added to the tension for me. Chris Eadie, what do you think? Were you a fan or were you a naysayer?
I wouldn't go so far as to say I was a fan, but I can't see its merits, I have to say. I think football now, whether you like it or not, is a business, and it's also consumed by more people who aren't in the stadium than are. Whether you like that or not, it's a fact, and I think it's being used for that audience. You know, I remember last season's Champions League, you had Spurs against City, and I watched that on television, and it was some of the most compelling football I've ever seen because of VAR at the end of it. But I do have an issue with offsides and VAR. I think, and Chris Johnson will know this more than me, moving pictures aren't continuous, so there's going to be frames missing, and they're taking it to the millimeter now, and they're taking it to when the ball's kicked, when it leaves the foot, and you're going to have frames missing on occasion. And I don't think they factored in a margin of error for offsides, and they're trying to make it an absolute when in fact it isn't.
But this plays into this rule of clear and obvious error, doesn't it? The offside rule states that if the referee isn't sure, if it's too close to call, then you give the advantage to the attacker. I'd presume with VAR you'd have that if it's that close, but you just don't change the referee decision. You go with whatever he says, because it was I haven't seen the stills properly, but the TalkSport drive time guys, I think it was, were talking about the Chelsea goal that was ruled off against Liverpool, and they were saying that there was debate there about when the pass is actually played and how close to being offside he was. And you think at that point you just go, stick with referee and just stay out of it. It's a lot of the issues with VAR that people are bringing up seem to be about how it's being applied rather than its use.
Yeah, that's where I am with it. I'm happy with its use, but I don't think it's being applied correctly.
Yeah, No, I completely agree. I've left someone particularly out of this conversation for the start part because he told me earlier before we started recording that he's upset on the fence with it. So, listen to the points we've made. Is there anything you want to add, Liam?
I think that pretty much summarises the way I feel, because I think what I would add to that though is I think that particularly in the Premier League it exists on such fine margins now for some of those clubs down the bottom, of which my team is highly likely to be involved in that later this season. And I think teams can get relegated on some of these decisions, so it's really important that they are correct. But when you're looking at that offside in the Spurs game, for instance, taking that as an example, I don't think you can call it a clear and obvious error to have allowed that goal to stand. And the margins there were so fine. I think there has to be an element of benefit of the doubt. I can't remember which part of the body it was that was deemed to be offside, but does it, if we're talking about 2 millimeters, it kind of does suck a lot of the joy out of it in some. I mean, as a neutral watching that game, I kind of found it quite amusing to see the back and forth between is it a goal, isn't it a goal, but I would hate it if it happened to my own team. It just leaves you hanging, particularly if you're in the stadium. I think it's a weird time for football, being it's not being fully embedded and as a fully polished thing just yet, and it's certainly prone to debate and interpretation of what does that offside actually mean. Really, it's a strange thing. I just think that teams like teams at the bottom of the table come the end of the season could end up being saved by a VAR decision, and that's a positive.
Or relegated by one.
Or relegated by one, yeah, absolutely.
So, but that's just the
might
same if it was a referee. So I don't see what I'm saying. It doesn't add anything to me. It's still one person's decision in a room that's not at the stadium. You might as well just leave it with the referee and stuff like that.
Yeah, but if you look at the sports, and I'm going to focus mainly on the British sports that have brought it in, which I'm looking at cricket and rugby. Both of those are sports that the referee's job is one of the hardest you can have. I have no idea how the referees, when you watch a game of cricket, get the calls right on LBW, and if it's taking a slight nick on the bat, more often than not, they are right as well. Like, it's not like they're going to VAR in cricket is changing the decisions all the time. And I know it's not called VAR, it's called something else. But and with rugby as well, it's particularly used for when it's a big scramble and you're just seeing if it's reached the ground over the line for a try and stuff like that.
Mike. I think what you're saying there, the two sports you've referenced use it, and they do use it very well. But what they also do is explain the decision to everyone here. What's going on in cricket, you can see the conversations between the third umpires, and the same in rugby. And it just seems that referees are reluctant to do that in football. And I do think that needs addressed. There needs to be some way of hearing what's happening, and then maybe even after the game they come out and they say, we didn't get involved in this one because we felt that the referee was right, a judgment call on this penalty decision. And if you heard that there, I think you would accept it a lot better. It gets silenced.
I agree.
It comes across maybe as arrogant, and I don't know.
Yeah, that's what they need to do with the referee is do what the NFL do. If it's a decision, then the referee's mic becomes live to the stadium. And the referee says, all I have to do is make the TV sign with his hands and say, we are checking a decision. That's it. Everybody knows what's going on. But at the minute, he's just stood there. You don't know what's happening. It takes too long to get to it. Some grounds haven't got the screens up. It's just, I don't know. It's not. They've brought it in too quickly for me.
Have they brought it into it quickly, or have they just not properly thought bringing it in through? I do think letting the fans in the stadium know what's going on is very important. I know some people have gone as far to say having replays and showing what they're showing, which I don't think is a good idea. It's only going to, in an already quite emotional sport, it's only going to put tensions higher if you're seeing that minute decision being called. But I think some way of letting the fans know what is going on, maybe a live mic is right. With referees coming out and explaining decisions after the game, we've been calling that for years. It's the Referees Association that forbid it. In fact, you can get in trouble. I believe it was which was the referee that was a former police officer? Blank on his name.
Uriah Rennie? No,
big bold fella. Anyone listening to this, the one person listening to this will know. I'm sure of it. But he came out after a game one day and explained his decision to the media, and he actually got in trouble for it. Do we know the logic behind that? Why referees can't make a decision? Has that ever been clarified? Why? I don't think the logic is that. I think they don't want to defend themselves. Basically, I think the association don't want to have to defend themselves rather than the referee.
Howard Webb.
Howard Webb, that's the referee.
Okay.
It probably won't be him now. Look, more of an idiot than I do. But anyway, there's another part to this as well. I want to quickly touch on, which again me and Chris Johnson have had a discussion about, is this handball rule, where if a handball is directly involved in a goal, it's automatically disallowed. Which already we've had different interpretations of that already this season, because it's how many touches before the goal does it have to be? Does it have to be the touch that puts it in the net, or is it the touch which would technically be an assist, or can it be further on in? It's another rule that doesn't seem to have been thought out, and I think that is another argument that anti-VAR-ists are using to hit VAR, but it's another case of them not thinking before they brought something in.
Yeah, I think on the handball issue, I think it's perfectly to say that you shouldn't score with your hand, whether it's accidental or not. But I do have an issue with assists and things, because the essence of handball is intent, in my opinion. And I just you could end up so how far do you go back? You know, as you say, I don't agree with it. I listened to a podcast, a scenario whereby a defender is defending his own corner and he handles the ball accidentally, so it's not a penalty. But he boots it up the other end of the pitch, and a fast striker gets on the end of it, doesn't take a touch, and scores first time. So that actually was an assist using the hand. Would you then go back and give a penalty?
Yeah, it's a good shout.
It might sound facetious, but it could happen.
Yeah,
well, we've had weirder things happen, haven't we? We've had keepers scoring from goal kicks that have just happened to bounce at the wrong time or something, or been caught by the wind. I think I was listening to that podcast. Is that from Jonathan Wilson?
It was a Jonathan Wilson scenario, so it was.
Yeah. Has anyone got anything more to say about VAR before we move on?
No, just that we've all agreed we're going to get rid of it.
Did we?
I think your line broke up at that point, mate. We just voted you to get rid of it.
Luckily, I'm the one editing the podcast, and I can make sure that it's the truth and not Chris's version of the truth. Right, we'll take a quick break then, and then we'll come back and we'll start chatting about the Premier League.
This is a Life Drinking podcast.
And we are back. So first, I want to talk about the top six, or maybe not. Maybe it'll be the top 7 or 8 if a few teams are going to try and break into it. First off, I want to be honest. There's a lot of people out there that believe that football journalists or people that cover football shouldn't support a team. There's this idea that you have to be non-aligned, and you see a lot of journalists getting attacked for perceived biased articles when they're talking about football teams or doing match reports or anything. The classic one that I remember was, does everyone know Jacob Steinberg, journalist for Guardian?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a few years ago. He did a piece. It was a Tottenham match report, and he probably said some decision should have gone Tottenham's way, and someone tweeted him, so, typical biased journo, you could tell you're a Tottenham fan. Now, not unpacking anything to do with the Jewish and Tottenham connotations there, he had plenty to say to himself, but Jacob Steinberg is actually quite an outspoken West Ham fan. So it's quite funny that someone had called him up on Twitter when he tweets a lot about West Ham for being a Tottenham fan. Sorry, what?
That's Twitter for you. Like, Twitter is renowned for a really intelligent debate.
It's the greatest minds all meeting together. But the point I want to make is that I have the opposite view. I wouldn't trust a journalist if they don't support football. I think you need to have some form of, to properly understand football, to have that real connection and that emotion. Otherwise, you don't understand what your fan in the stand is going through. Having said that, there are some very good journalists that don't support football. I think Barry Glendenning is one who doesn't have a particular affiliation.
Sunderland fan, isn't it?
He is. He's not a passionate Sunderland fan, though.
Who is?
Yeah.
So, throughout the chat, I'm going to use our own football club affiliations to move the chat. So, as we talk about the teams that are hopefully going to stay in the top 6, in my case, I want to start with you, Mr. Eadie, the Closet United fan amongst us.
Yes.
How are you feeling about your chances this season under Mr. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer?
Grim. I'm really quite pessimistic about it all for this season. I think it seems to be the decision's been made to go back to and develop a side with a particular DNA, if you like. That's all fine, and everyone gets on board and says, yes, give the manager time. And that's okay as long as people stick to that. Already we're seeing he's lost a few games. People are starting to question whether it's a good idea. If you're going to do it, you have to stick with it through thick and thin. And I think it could end up, don't qualify for Europe, maybe for 1, maybe 2 seasons. But you're hoping that the process works and you come back at some point.
Are you talking Europe as in Champions League or Europe as in Europe?
Well, when you asked me to sort of talk about the top sides, I listed out where I thought teams would finish, and I didn't have Man United in the top 6 this year. So I'm talking Europe this year for certain. Yeah, I really think we're lacking. I think we're lacking in quality to start with, plus numbers, which has never happened as long as I've been sort of following them. I don't think they have a squad big enough to challenge on the top 4 and potentially go away to the far reaches of Europe every Thursday night. We're already seeing muscle injuries in the team. Rashford's out now as well. He's clearly been overplayed, I think. And now they're going to rely on Mason Greenwood, who looks a fine player, but he's 17. He shouldn't be your saviour, in my opinion. Be bringing him in like Ferguson used to.
Yeah.
You're 2-3-0 up, and he comes on and he learns a bit. He gets a couple of starts in the cup and develops that way. And I think we're.
Where do you think you'll finish?
I 7th or 8th.
Who do you think's finishing above you then?
I have Liverpool, City, Arsenal, Tottenham as a top 4, and then I've put Chelsea 5th. I put Leicester 6th. We played Leicester recently, and I watched it. And every time I watch a United match, I look at the opposition and see which players would I like our team. And it used to be you'd maybe pick one, but that Leicester team, I think I got most of the, almost 5 or 6 of them. Leicester have a really strong spine. I think that's something that United are. Schmeichel, you have Evans and the Maguire's replacement, who I'm not going to try and pronounce. The Turkish fella who looks great.
Yeah,
they have Eadie and Tielemans, and then even Vardy up front's playing well. There's so many players on that Leicester side that would get in to the Man United team, if you're totally honest. James Maddison as well, is another one.
Yeah.
So I like them, and I like Brendan Rodgers. I think he's been made a bit of a figure of fun unfairly by some people. I think he's a great manager.
I think it's quite interesting you talk about United bringing in youth, being a Chelsea fan, and with us half being forced to do it, but half doing it because that's who we brought in to manage this period. But we do it with a backing of record-winning FA Youth Cup teams of very, very strong showings in the youth Champions League or UEFA Youth League. Do you know? I don't know if you follow much in the way of United's youth teams, but do you know if there's been any similar pedigree on that side of things?
I know Mourinho was challenged on his record at one time, as he usually is, about bringing young players through, and he pointed out that the under-23s had been relegated. So who was he meant to bring in? So I don't think there's been as many as there used to be, but there is a lot of chatter around Mason Greenwood. I haven't seen that much of him. Also Chong and Gomez. I quite like Twinzebe as well. I would maybe like to see him start more.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's a gluttony of players coming through.
It's like Manchester United have basically become a mid-table Premier League team now.
Yeah, it's happened very quickly.
Very quickly. It's like there was weekends going, you'd see Man United be going away to West Ham or away to a Crystal Palace, and the home team would sit deep, sit back, and try and get a draw or try and pinch a goal. Now, United are fair game for nearly everybody. United come to town and teams are going, no, let's have a go at them. And when they go to Old Trafford, they're not sitting back. They're going to Old Trafford and thinking, we can get something here. And United has lost that fear factor that they had for years. And I don't know how you get that back.
Can you see Solskjaer lasting this season?
I don't think they will change him, no. I think they'll keep him. I think they're going to stick to their guns on this. They've tried to chop them, but personally, I don't think any manager whose manager had relegated Cardiff for near Man United. Apart from this rose-tinted look on things, this player, and he knows the club. I think when you look at what Tottenham did with Pochettino, what Man City did, planned to get Guardiola, Liverpool, they replaced Brendan Rodgers, who'd done a fairly good job for them, with Klopp as soon as he became available.
Yeah.
They wooed these managers for almost. And United have just been running. Now, they got Mourinho, and at the time you thought, yeah, the man, a top manager, but very quickly found out that we weren't any different to any of his other teams. He would just, after a couple of years, start abusing everyone.
I think the only thing that changes Solskjaer's future is Pochettino. I think he's the manager they would love, and I think if Pochettino gives them the wink that he's had enough of Spurs, I think that's when the change will come. Because I think he is the next manager of Manchester United.
See, that's an interesting one because don't you feel that Pochettino is sort of flattered to deceive with Spurs a little bit?
Champions League finalist with Spurs is not no mean feat.
Yeah, but it's anyone can luck their way to a Champions League final. I know my club lucked their way to winning it.
But
it's
didn't sign
in
a
the league
single.
Is where you prove your mettle, and he's still lagging behind.
But they didn't sign a single player last season. Still got to the Champions League final and ran out of steam. Hence the poor form towards the end of the season. Maybe if they'd have spent some more money or gave him some money to spend, they'd have won the Champions League and been closer maybe to Liverpool and Man City. You know, it's one of them. It's took those players as far as they can, and he needed some money, needed some new faces in, and they didn't give him them. I think now he's looking elsewhere. I think now he just looks a bit miserable. His comments in the press are a bit different. I do think that United, if they play the cards right, they could have him before the end of the season.
It's an interesting one. Just out of interest, what do you think's caused the rot, Eadie, with United? Is it a case of Woodward signings? Do you blame chopping and changing the manager or something else?
I think first and foremost I blame chopping and changing to a certain degree because Louis van Gaal really ripped the heart out of the squad, in my opinion. There was a lot of good, what I would call proper squad players: Welbeck, Hernandez, Nane, good professionals, and they just didn't fit his possessions-based ideas, so they were just cast aside and sold. And I think it was done far too quickly, and I think it was done far too cheaply, as well. And then you bring in Mourinho, who is a force of nature himself, and we all get on board with his signings, and they're all three strong, players, and you're left with a squad that really doesn't resemble a plan. People have talked about getting a director of football, and I think it is time of the size of Manchester United, they should have a focus of how the club is run, no matter who the manager is. So the signings remain similar. There might be slight variations, but the types of player that Man United buy is X, Y, and Z, no matter who's in charge. I think that's been the problem. The money's been spent. You can really see that when a new manager comes in, how many of the old manager's players he casts out. There's a massive turnover of players. Used to be the key. I think that all plays its part. Plus the extraordinary weight of players that causes lots of ruction.
See, Chelsea had a similar thing where we were chopping and changing managers, but we managed to build. For a long time, we managed to build an identity while still doing that. We were still pretty much Mourinho's determined team. But I think the main difference is we had Michael Emeralo, who Chelsea fans hated at the time. He was the man that forced Mourinho out. He was the evil man behind everything. But in fact, he did a lot of good for Chelsea. And when he left for Monaco, that's when our transfer dealings started struggling, and we lost the identity that we had. So yeah, it's having someone that's not particularly a football guy who is chasing names and figures rather than anything else. I think that's probably at the top. You need someone that's more determined, more on the ball than that, really.
Yeah, I also think, from when Woodward took... Man United lost Ferguson and Gill at the same time. It was massive. Yeah. And Woodward came... And almost immediately, there was a lot more talk in the press about signings, and it seemed to be much more protracted. It used to go on for months. I remember, you'd support Man United and you just hear in the news a day before that they're going to get somebody.
Yeah, I remember when they signed Andy Cole, it was like that.
Yeah, it just came out of nowhere.
Literally, it was like 10 o'clock at night, Radio 5 Live. Man, you've signed Andy Cole. It was like, what? Bizarre.
But that was a completely different media world then. We've got 24-hour news channels on now. We've got Twitter accounts and whatever else that need to fill space. So the begging for this, and I think a lot of it is leaked by the clubs. I think a lot of it is also pure speculation from certain journalists' parts as well.
But also, I think Man United have allowed them bargaining chips in other deals that have nothing to do with them, and they've allowed themselves to buy players that, I'm thinking about moving, but really they're not. Yeah. It's just to get better contract or move elsewhere. And Ramos is a perfect example. I just laughed, but all of a sudden we're going to sign Ramos. There was no way he was coming.
Well, it seemed for a while that every year you were going to buy Ronaldo.
Yeah.
And for the last few seasons you were going to buy Bale.
Yeah. I just don't think it was handled properly by Wood and Gill there. I don't think that would have happened under Gill. Well, it didn't.
Similar to what Arsenal did when they lost David Dein. He was that transfer person at Arsenal, wasn't he? And they always said that when he left, that they suddenly stopped bringing in the calibre of players they were bringing in, and then slowly dropped down the table a little bit and didn't become the like Liverpool and City, I know Arsenal and Manchester United have both kind of lost their way a bit.
Well, yeah, but this is one that quite a few, and we've now got this complete rotation where every team that has been a force in the Premier League era have now had that feeling of slipping back down the table now, with United and Chelsea the last ones to do it, really. How do you think Arsenal looking under Emery? Because I've seen some very upset Arsenal fans with their performances that don't seem to be set in the world light, and I'm not going to say that I'm not unhappy that David Luiz seems to be struggling to life up north. But how are we? Do you think that Emery's the right choice for him? Do you think he's going to be one that's going to keep them to stay over until the end of the season, or are they going to go for someone else?
Me.
Anyone that wants to jump in.
I think we're saying they're in turmoil. They're only 2 points behind Manchester City. You know, they're not doing terribly. They're fourth in the league. I think they'll finish third at the end of the season. It's a long road back to where they were. Baby steps.
I'm not saying they're in turmoil, but what I'm saying is that there's a lot of there's a lot of Arsenal fans. There's one Arsenal fan in particular that I see a lot who is very unhappy with the way they're playing. I've seen other rumblings as well. Are they at the moment, is their position a true reflection of how they're doing, or are they than they should be?
I don't know. I think it's probably a true reflection of where you are. You know, you don't get the points you deserve. I just think that similar to United, they've spent too many years signing second and tier level players. Not as in Championship League One, but as in not the top flight players who they're attracting. Instead, like what Wenger could be criticised for, instead of going out and spending 20 million on a centre half that could last you 5 years, he'd spend 4 million on a 21-year-old from France you never heard of, who'd come in, not be good enough, eventually disappear again. And it's just not doing the right recruitment year on year and trying to find these players from elsewhere rather than shopping at the top of the market. And hopefully, they signed Pepe, 72 million this summer, was it? Is he a 72 million pound player? Don't know. I mean, he's got good potential, but at least they're trying to get the higher end players in again now. And maybe in 2 years' time, so I think that's what you've got to look at now. You've got to look at Liverpool and City and think not how are we going to catch them now, but how are we going to catch them in 2 years' time? Because that's how long it's going to take for the rest of the league to catch them up.
But the thing I don't get about Arsenal is, and okay, yes, we talk about them being fourth, but you saw them having to come back from behind to beat Villa at the weekend and stuff like that. You can look at the United squad and you go, okay, you know what? They need someone there. They're weak there. They need someone there. And then you look at Arsenal and okay, centre backs are struggling a little bit, but full backs they are well stuck up on. They've even now got some very good defensive midfielders. Torreira, who looked brilliant towards the back end of last season, is now struggling a lot more, but they've got Guendouzi behind him, who again impressed me a lot last season. I thought he was a really good up-and-coming player. Is now struggling again, and then you've got the embarrassment of riches up front, including two, would you say, world-class strikers in Lacazette and Aubameyang?
I would go with that. I would agree.
Yeah.
So, while Solskjaer and Lampard would have, the excuse of, well, we haven't got the players. Has Emery got that excuse if they don't get the top four this season?
Defensively, I'd say still not got the players.
Perhaps he doesn't. No.
David Lowe.
But I think they will make the top four. I think similar to Chris Johnson, I have them third. I think Emery's a great manager. You can't question his record really. Said already, the quality attack. David Luiz, in my opinion, of a footballer. How on earth he's made it as far as he has. But I think if they could just get in transition, they're wide open. Can just get it sorted out. I think they could be a really good team to watch. I would back them to finish third.
Yeah, I agree. I think Emery is a good manager, and he will know what he needs. And maybe in this window, he couldn't get the players he wanted, so he's just using David Luiz as a stopgap until he can get the players he wants in, maybe for next season.
Brilliant. So shall we move on to the top two quickly? Move on. Liverpool and City. Now I've only got two of our predictions for the top four down here, but both me and Chris have both gone different winners. I've gone for City. Chris has gone for Liverpool. That is so unlike us, Chris. We normally agree on our winners. Liam, Mr. Eadie, what are your thoughts on?
I've gone Liverpool this time, and I have to admit I would absolutely get that if it happened. I just think they've learned enough of these last couple. They've gone close. They just look like a team full of winners. They're not, when they win a game, they're not overly bothered about it. They just it was expected. Nowhere in the side we have depth as well. I think injuries to centre half could be enough to set City back enough points. I can't see Liverpool dropping 3-4 games.
Yeah,
So
I agree.
I think 5 points already. It could be that's enough. It could be City drop another few points while they're sorting out their centre halves, and that'll be enough.
Is this whole thing about injuries to centre halves for City, is it when you spent the amount of money they've spent, can you really use an injury to mainly your main centre back as an excuse? You've still got John Stones in there, who he's a shell of a bloke that he's supposed to be, but this is the guy that Pep Guardiola said, he is my man, I'm going with him because he's got everything I want, and now he's flashing to deceive. It looks like they're moving Fernandinho back there permanently until injuries and stuff sort them out. Is it, when you spend that much money, can you really make that excuse? Really?
Well, you probably can't. No, it's certainly an oversight, I think, to leave yourself in a position where you're relying on John Stones, who then gets injured, and you're moving a 33-year-old defensive midfielder back. Fernandinho, I think, will be fine in that role, but I just think it's enough. It's enough of a drop off for them maybe to draw a game. And the way the Premier League is now, drawing a game is like a defeat. And I think they could just draw a couple of matches here, there, and the gap's already 5 points. That could be 7 very handy. And I think 7's nearly too much. I can't see Liverpool dropping much more than 11 or 12 points over the whole season.
Liam, sorry, I hung you out to dry a minute earlier. Who have you got winning the Premier League this season? Are you backing me, or are you turning against me with the Chris's?
I have to say as well, and it's not particularly something I'd like to see, but I do think it's Liverpool's year. I think, but I would say that there's such a gulf between the two of them and everyone else. I think it's kind of, I would love to see the points difference at the end of the season. I think it's going to be maybe a triple figures again for at least one of these teams. So I just think I can't look past Liverpool's front three and the firepower that they have there with Firmino, Mane, Salah, and even beyond that they have Origi stepping up. He usually scores when he plays. Shaqiri, Oxlade-Chamberlain and Lallana. I just think it's their year. I don't see that. It feels weird to say this about City with their embarrassment of riches, but I don't think there's quite the same squad depth there in terms of. That sounds weird to say that. I'm just looking at their squad now. It's insane, but I do think it's Liverpool's year.
So this is quite an interesting. I heard a quote from a journalist I follow, who's a Chelsea journalist, who was talking about philosophies in football. He said, philosophy of student football, you do what you need to win games. But what we've got here at the top of the Premier League, and vastly superior to everyone else at the top of the Premier League, we have two teams that are built on philosophies to the point where they will move a player in their squad to a position they're not familiar with, instead of bringing in someone that they wouldn't be happy with. I think the classic case of Liverpool is Giorgio Wijnaldum, who isn't particularly, he's not a star player, he's not going to be on anyone's wish list, but he's been great for Liverpool, and great for Liverpool in the fact that they've even used him as a striker because he has that right mentality for him to do a job for them wherever they need him. Are we now in the era of philosophy where everyone should have that, or do you think there's still room for teams to chop and change their tactics in a Mourinho style way? Chris.
Which one?
The one we've been calling Chris this whole part.
Oh, that was me. I think it just depends on the quality of players you've got. Liverpool and City have amassed squads of good, world-class footballers, not just players who can play in certain positions. And the training they do week in, week out, they know players can drop back in game into certain positions. Players like James Milner, like I said, or Wijnaldum. At City, they used Zinchenko, signed as centre midfielder. He was a fantastic left back towards the end of last season. And I think the level of footballer they're signing, they can drop into those positions for 2 or 3 games. Maybe not throughout a season, but they can do a job there for 2 or 3 games, and you wouldn't even know they weren't natural there. I mean, they used Fabian Delph at left back Delph wasn't a great footballer, I never thought, but at left back for Man City, when you've got other world-class players around you, it just lifts their game up as well. And I think it's worked really well for them.
Brilliant. I've been unsure whether to talk about this team, which is why they've ended up last. Chelsea. Liam, what are you thinking about the efforts to bring through young players? I know last night it was the League Cup against Grimsby, yes, but that's the first Chelsea team to ever feature 6 teenagers in the lineup. Are we suddenly now becoming a more likeable team after years of being hated?
No.
Yes, Mike, I will say yes for you. But I think as much as it's admirable and partly forced upon you to play youth so prominently, I do think it's going to be the downfall for the season. I do feel a little short in terms of, well, I have you just me, but I think fifth is realistic, maybe sixth. But it's great to see Tammy Abraham finally coming through and scoring goals in the Premier League. I think he's showing his worth. I'm pleased to see that happening. Lampard bringing him through, and the talented young midfielders too. But I don't know. I mean, what do you think? Where do you? I'm interested as a Chelsea fan where you see yourself.
So I've stuck us in fourth, and now I think part of that is that mentality that I've always had of I'll always back us to get to it. Now I'm not silly enough to say that we're going to challenge City and Liverpool. But I think fourth would be a really good achievement. A really good achievement for granted what we've got. At the start of the season, I would have said we won't get in top four. Will be fifth would be nice. Having seen the younger players, just how much they've stepped up, and I've been a passionate supporter of youth. I've been watching youth games. I've been to youth games live when I used to live in. Even I am surprised at just how well players like Tammy Abraham and Mason Mount, Fleco Tomori have stepped up. And even last night with Billy Gilmore, who is a 17-year-old Scottish lad that we've pinched from Rangers, he looked brilliant. He looked in control of the ball at all times. Even the pros were even the more senior players were looking for him to distribute the ball and to play it around. And there's a Chelsea account I follow who so he looks like a young Xavi. And yes, there was a certain amount of tongue in cheek to it, but he looked really nice and accomplished. So we've got these players coming through who are stepping up, as I said, more than anyone's expected. And if you look at who's let us down this season, it tended to be the senior pros. So I would be happy with fifth. I don't think Europa League football next season would be a nightmare. It wouldn't be. It would probably help us in what we're trying to do. And I think we can sneak fourth. But a lot of the work, and Lampard is the manager. But the most important person behind the scenes is Jody Morris, his assistant manager, who is the guy who worked with the youth for 2-3 years. He worked with the under-18s and moved up to the developmental squad. And he is the one that knows his players inside out. He knows how best to use them. I think he was behind the three at the back formation we used because that's what he used. That's the Chelsea DNA, basically, that we've brought in with our youth teams. They all play a 3-4-3 or a 3-5-2 variations between games. That is because, as Mr. Eadie will know, that when you're chopping and changing managers, they all come in with their own ideas. And so instead of these young players, now you're perfect for a wing back for us. Now you're going to have to move forward. Now we decide you're an attacking midfielder. And we had that with players that were being moved around. They've given these lads, this is how we play. We play pressing, short passing, quick football. And that's what you're seeing the senior team play now. So I think there's only more to come from this, but I more than anyone else on this podcast, I have the rose-tinted glasses of a fan. Yeah. Anyone else got anything to say on Chelsea?
No, I think you've covered it.
Maybe a question for you, Mike. Do you think Frank Lampard's just to manage this transition transfer ban lifted, and you'll get a big manager in to spend the money?
I don't know who you would get in, to be perfectly honest. There's not anyone out there that I think fits the bill that we would look for in a big team manager. And as I said, Lampard comes with the real benefit of having Morris by his side, so knows young players coming up. And one of the first things they did when they came in was promote a load of the youth coaches as well. It seems like the regime is here to stay. And if they get fifth, even sixth, while having this issue, I don't see why you would get rid of him, personally, with us playing as well as we are. Right, are we moving on then?
Yeah, cool.
So, now this is a Premier League early season preview. However, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about a few things lower down the league. Now, of course, there are 3 football leagues to cover, so we're not going to cover everything. We will pick a few points, and it may only be 2 points, it may be more. But we do have a Barnsley fan with us on the podcast. Chris, how do you feel Barnsley is looking so far, and where do you see yourself going?
Well, given we are third bottom of the championship, we're not doing very well, and I think we'll probably finish third bottom of the championship. Unfortunately, we just don't have the quality required at this level. we'll give it a good go, but I think at the average age of our side is about 23 years old. We have a lot of nationalities in there because of the new ownership, how they've gone about it. And I just think we'll look like we're a little bit lacking in key areas, unfortunately.
It's one of those, and I know you have an issue with the way you guys have been run. You've been run to bring in short-term profit rather than be built as a project, which is the in word to use for football teams nowadays. How would you? Because you've sold. Was it 3 of your best players you sold in the summer?
Yeah. So we lost 4 of probably our best 5 players in the summer. 1 on a free transfer. 3 players went for a combined 10.5 million. And the new ownership model was to sign 12 under 23-year-olds from around Europe and hope that some of them are any good.
It's an odd one, and so that money, of course, hasn't been all been used. You don't sign for a team that's just promoted to the Championship. You'd be hard pressed to spend over £10 million on 12 players. But with. Because I know you've got an issue with this and you feel you're going to go straight back down, you're going to start this yo-yo effect where every time you perform well in League One, players are being moved on, see how much they can get for them. But when you're down there and you're seeing teams like Bolton nearly got out of existence, Bury, you've got MK Dons who are still floating around, who are of course remnants of the old, MK Dons who were the
Wimbledon.
We were Wimbledon, and of course Wimbledon, which was the club started by the fans, and the issues there. Do you not feel at least that you don't have that worry that you're not going to wake up one day and the repo men are moving in and taking everything out of the stadium?
No, not at all, because football, yes, part of it is a business, but the stuff that goes on the field is not a business, and people invest time and money into hope that one day your team will achieve something, that you are building to something over a period of time. And if your whole business plan is to every 24 months sell your best 4 or 5 players for 10, 15 million and then start again, you're never going to get anywhere. You're just going to be stuck in this circle of going to the games. Oh, he's a good player, yeah, he's played well for 6 months. Oh, there he goes again, he's gone. You know, you're never going to get anywhere. And the other thing they're doing at Barnsley is they won't sign anybody over the age of 24 years old, or loan players. So you've got all these young lads coming in, and they need some experienced players in the dressing room to help the team and to help them as players. There's games this season where we've been hanging on late on, and you just want somebody out there with an old head to grab hold of these young kids and just say, look, calm down, do this, do that. There's nobody there, so it's never going to work. You can't keep doing it. The only thing it will do is if their scouting and recruitment's been well and as good as they think. So far they've done really well with it, but they will make money, and that is all they will do, and that is all they have bought it for. There's a Chinese guy, an Indian guy, an American guy. Sounds like a joke, doesn't it? Walk into a bar. But no, they bought the club together, and all it is a small part of their business portfolio, that if it makes them 5-10 million every 18 months, great. Apart from that, doesn't matter. And that's the sad thing about it, unfortunately.
But is it, you're talking about moving up, do you see the Premier League as a be-all and end-all, or would you be happy just competing in the top half of the Championship? Where do you believe you guys will stop?
I think, unfortunately, we are a League One club now, but we're always a Championship club, old Division 2 club. Because of the Premier League and the money and the clubs that's dropped down into that league now, it is incredibly hard to compete. So I think we are probably a top-end League One, bottom-half Championship club. But under the right manager, with the right players, you can achieve things. And we've done it before, a long time ago we did it, and other teams have done it, doing that. And you can do something if you build something. But if your whole strategy is just to basically people traffic and sell players, which is what they did at Nice as well. They bought Nice in France, and the fans basically eventually got them out of the club, because that's what they did. They just became a club that bought in players from Africa, gave them 2 years, sold them off, never did that was it. You know, and they eventually got to 3rd or 4th. I think they finished 1 year, sold everybody. I think Seri went to Fulham, Balotelli went to Marseille, and that was it. There's no end game for them. There's no glory. There's nothing getting promotion apart from the money getting promoted to the Premier League. Fair enough, but it's such a risk to try and get there that for them it's easier just to keep trying to make the £5-10 million every 15 to 18 months.
Would you, and you, of course, you did the DVD Daydream Believers, which I believe is still available to buy?
Of course. I have a few thousand copies knocking about.
That was about Barnsley's one season in the Premier League.
It was.
What would you take a season in the Premier League if you were going to drop down to, say, League Two straight after? If you're going to have that full, would you take that season in the Premier League for that moment?
Not now, because we've done it. You know, I think because that was the only time I've ever been in the top flight, so it was special. And you still hope that one day you'll get there again. But I'm not a massive Premier League fan, to be honest, because I work there. I work with it day in, day out, and I see the things that go on there, and the money, and how it changes clubs and people who work at clubs. So I just want a football club that tries to win games and plays attractive football. It's a bit dour. I know. I'm not the most optimistic Barnsley fan out there.
Anyone that has listened to you on any of wrestling podcasts will fully expect this from you. So
true, very true.
It won't be a surprise to anyone.
No.
I want to have a quick chat about Cheltenham. Now, Cheltenham is my hometown club, as well as Liam's. I don't know, Liam, when the last time you managed to get down to Wadham Road or to the World of Smiles Stadium or whatever awful sponsored name it is now. That was a good 16 years ago. And I went a few seasons ago. Because we had a few seasons where we were challenging for promotion from League Two, and we had Mark Yates at the helm, and everything was looking hunky dory, and then he was suddenly sacked, and we plummeted down the table and got relegated at the end of that season. Now it turns out that Mark Yates had done some things, and I won't say what they are, but he made his position within the squad untenable completely. And there was no choice; he had to go. I was fairly critical of the decision to go Edinburgh at the time, but when you understand, you understand. So it's one of those things. We had a season in the Vanarama National League, which made us look great, and it was nice to see. We actually had more games played on TV in the Vanarama National League than we ever would have in League Two, because you don't get League Two games. But BT Sport at the time had a deal where they would show one Vanarama National League game a season on there. So and as we were at the top, it was us and Forest Green with a big rivalry at the top. They were often on the TV, and then we came back up. This was with Gary Johnson now, and I went a few seasons ago in our first season back up, and I saw Cheltenham versus Newport and Cheltenham versus Cambridge United. Both games were, if you could think of that awful stereotypical English lower league football, that's the exact football we were playing. It was dreadful to watch, it really was, and I haven't been back since. In fact, in the Newport game, the Newport fans are more interested in the actual football. We've now got Michael Duff in charge. Burnley fans will recognise that name. He was there for quite a few years. Also, any Football Manager fans from back in the day will know he was a player that I don't know which FM it was, but he went on to be a wonder kid on one of those. I don't know if even my FM players can enlighten me.
Yeah, I can't remember which. I don't think he was actually termed to one particular attributes that made him just amazing in the match engine. Actually, really powerful. But everyone bought him. I remember buying him. He was centre midfield.
You don't take the wonder kid status away from him. It's the best you're ever going to get. the most excited the most Cheltenham player I've seen on there since was a young lad called Jamie Edge, who Arsenal signed. He was in their youth team, then got released from West Brom, and I don't think he's done anything since. He was one of those lads that a friend of mine, I went to school with him. Yeah, I played football with him. He was really good, and you never hear from him again. That's the best we've got other than Michael Duff. So, but no, he's apparently got Cheltenham playing some actually decent football now. So they're looking really good in League 2, and they are third, I believe. I did check it a minute ago and I've completely forgotten, because that's what I do. So yeah, they're playing very well, and we're looking forward to a hopeful season. I might actually pop back in, because I'm a Glory supporter, a bit me, so now we're doing well and fighting for promotion, I'll pop in and see how they're doing. Does anyone have any other business from the football leagues before we take a break?
Nope.
I'll tell you in the break in a second. Right, brilliant. On that note, I will move on and we'll take a quick break.
You're listening to Life Junkies podcast.
And we are back. So we've talked about the good stuff. Shall we get a bit more miserable now? Let's have a chat about the relegation favourites. And I apologise to Liam. I've already apologised several times. I've apologised on the show notes, but we need to talk about we need to talk about Steve Bruce. What's going on?
It's hard to... the fact that we have Steve Bruce calamitous in itself. But I'm kind of over and a little bit sick of the whole conversations about Rafa Benitez. I think we need to move on from that. It's not healthy to keep looking back at your ex in that way. I think the way that he departed was completely avoidable. I think that despite whatever noises they want to make, the hierarchy at Newcastle, I think it was entirely on them that Rafa left. I don't think he was asking for the world. I think, developments to the training ground and a bit of money to spend to help push us up the table is not unreasonable. He had a vision. Anyway, so bringing in Steve Bruce, I think is proving and will ultimately turn out to be as disastrous as it sounded when we appointed him. And I cannot see us staying in the league this season. I actually have us, look at doing some predictions. I have us rock bottom. I can't see a team that are worse than us at the minute. And I think it is a shame because when I look at the spine of the team, I'm a big fan of Dubravka in goal. He's had a couple of errors at the tail end of last season, but on the whole, I think he's a very good goalkeeper. In defence, when we can keep Lejeune fit, I think he's a good player, and Fabien Cher at the back. And I think we've developed something quite solid in central midfield as well, with the young Longstaff come to the fore last season, and Hayden turned in some good performances, decided to stay. There was a lot of talk about him leaving. I'm really pleased that he stayed. But even in spite of having that kind of good core at the team, it's totally wasted on a manager like Steve Bruce. I don't believe that he can get the best out of those players. I think we're pitifully short up front, and I think that's demonstrated by... there was an inevitable excitement about Andy Carroll coming back, but just watching that game against Brighton and seeing how desperate we were for him in the 80th minute to come on and do something, anything, long ball game, get it up on his head and hope for the best. I think that's desperate, and I think it's sad. You can't rely on Andy Carroll. He's not going to be fit for large parts of the season. So I think we're really going to struggle for goals. I don't see much width in the team, particularly with the formation that Steve Bruce likes to play, if you can even kind of pinpoint that, because many people can't even see much logic in his formation. So, yeah, I sound a bit miserable, but I think with due... I think it's... I just can't see us staying up. I can't see us staying up at all. I think we've had a tendency in the past few seasons to sort of panic buy in January, particularly with McLaren. That season when we were relegated under McLaren, ultimately Benitez, but McLaren put the hard work in there to get us relegated. I think even whatever we do in January, if we put reinforcements up front, I can't see. I think the damage will already be done by that point. This last weekend really put things in perspective for me. I think the win against Tottenham was a fluke. I think we played very well, but I can't see us replicating that many times this season. And playing against Brighton at home and trying to play a counter-attack and having 27% possession in that game, I think is tragic. It's not what anyone wants to see. Steve Bruce comes in and makes noises about playing attacking football and then reverts to a counter-attacking format against Brighton at home. It's bizarre, and for as much as I want to like him, I like the connection that he has, being a local guy in that, but I just think he's a crap manager. I don't think there's any weight behind him in terms of anything that he's achieved in the past that gives me any hope for keeping us up. And I actually don't think on this occasion, when they sacked McLaren and brought in Benitez, this time I'm struggling to see, even if they did make a call to sack Bruce, I don't know who we'd get in. Because when you look at the shortlist that we allegedly had in the summer, was Bruce 11th choice, I think I read? So they've gone through 10 other managers that just don't want to be there, don't see a vision, don't want to work under Ashley. So I really, really fear, not only for this season, but what would happen beyond that. So there's a nice kind of inspiring, happy little account of my time as a Newcastle fan.
I was just looking at it and I realised that Andy Carroll is 30 years old. I still remember when he was that young, emerging, maybe not exciting talent, but someone that some people were naming their fantasy football teams after. Maybe Andy Carroll for England or something along those lines. I don't know.
I know.
It's one of those, and it always felt a bit inevitable. And you know me, I'm not the biggest fan of Rafa Benitez, and that's putting it lightly. I wasn't happy with his time at Chelsea at all, but it did always feel like you guys were punching above your weight having him as your manager. This
Definitely.
is a guy that's been at Real Madrid. This is a guy that won the Champions League at Liverpool. He was at Inter for a while. He managed the greatest club in the world, Chelsea. So it's one of those where it always felt like he was going to leave you at some point. Another offer was going to come to him. So yeah, it did feel to be a bit like he was always going to go. Talking about getting someone else in. Again, was Steve Bruce the best option? Was he the only option? I guess only the people involved will know. You'd have to think, though, there's got to be someone that is interested, that would like the chance to manage in the Premier League. Newcastle, with Ashley in charge, is still Newcastle. It's still a big team. So I don't know. Mr. Eadie, what are your thoughts? How do you see Newcastle faring this?
I actually wouldn't be as pessimistic. I think there's space in the league for a team with somebody like Andy Carroll up front. I think if he's fit, there's a lot of team capabilities to deal with him. It's just getting him fit. As Liam said, there's already a basis, half decent defence. I think that might surprise some people, and they're not going to get into Europe or anything, but I think they'll survive handily enough if Andy Carroll stays fit. I think, by his own admission, his desire in Newcastle this time higher than it was. He's taken it for granted as much as when he was first there. I think he.
So we're quite a way off now. Pardew showing off his Manager of the Year award. Leah, where do you think it's gone wrong? Is it fair to blame Ashley when Ashley was a part of that movement up to the top end of the table as well? Is it that he was better for that period, pulled the reins back, or is there something else going wrong? What do you think?
I think what you've pinpointed there with Pardew's season, where he finished 5th, is actually then where it went wrong, because we had an opportunity there to build on that, and we were always going to find it more difficult in terms of squad depth playing in Europe, but we had some scope there to build, and we had a great team, actually. That's the most exciting. It feels weird saying that about a Pardew team now, looking back at what happened afterwards, but Demba Ba, Papas Cisse, then supported with a midfield of Cheick Tiote and Johan Cabaye, one of my favourite players. I just think it was a great team and a real opportunity to build on that. And I don't think we'd have necessarily finished that high up the table every season, but we could have really established ourselves at that point. And I think Ashley's reluctance he just has no desire to do that. I honestly believe that he would be happy with 17th every season and to get that Premier League money back in. I think there are worse football owners out there, because you have to look at the mismanagement of some of the teams that we've referenced lower down in the leagues, but I just think he's a guy who doesn't care, and that is such a sin for a team like Newcastle, a one team city that's built on such a dedicated following. And you hear all these things churned out about Newcastle, about expectation. I don't think anyone really expects anything at this point. There's no, when we've kind of constantly year after year had our aspirations quashed by an owner that doesn't want to spend or doesn't want to develop the youth setup or the training facilities, it's we don't have any expectation now. The mismanagement of bringing in clowns like John Carver and Steve McLaren, whatever their recruitment policy was there, they seem to put right with Rafa Benitez, and then quite swiftly demonstrated that they've learned nothing, and they can't recognise when they have a good thing, because holding on to Rafa was the only thing they needed to do over the summer, really. Give him a bit of money, but hold on to him, and we wouldn't be in the mess that I think we are. I would like to agree with Chris and say that if we can keep Andy Carroll fit, then he will score goals and push us up the table, but I can't see that. His track record is so poor at keeping. I like the guy and I think he's a great player, but there's already reports now that we might not see him start a game until the new year, and bringing him on as an impact sub game after game is fine, but you shouldn't be chasing a game against Brighton at home after 80 minutes, pinning all your hopes on Andy Carroll. So yeah, I think having said that, if we're talking about the relegation kind of scrap down there, Brighton are a team that I would include in that, because for as much noise as was made about how good they were apparently in the first half, they still couldn't put a goal past us. I think they're kind of toothless up front, and I would expect them to be there or thereabouts at the end of the season, because I didn't see much from them in that game. That we were there for the taking and they didn't do it. So I think I have Brighton and actually maybe Villa down there as my two other teams that I think will struggle.
Right, so I see you trying to deflect the conversation away from Newcastle a little bit, and I get that. And I will come back and talk about this anti-John Terry chat in a minute. But I've got a couple more points to address with Newcastle. Do you think that finishing 5th was the issue? Because to Mike Ashley, that vindicated his management. Like, I can almost hear him now. Oh, this football like's easy. I can do it. Do this. And in fact, him trying to carry that on is what's caused you guys to come back down. Also, with talking about Andy Carroll, you talk about the injuries he's had. These injuries take tolls on players. We've seen it as a Chelsea fan. I've seen it with Joe Cole, and most dramatically with Michael Essien, who after his knee problems, they bulked his knees up, but he was a shell of the player he was. He was one of the most exciting players in the world when he first came to Chelsea, and then after his injuries, he was a shell of a man. He's been talked about as being as good as a new signing for Chelsea. When he came back from it, he struggled to get in the side. So he's got that side, and Andy Carroll, God bless him, but he's not a technical player. He's not blessed with that side of it. He is a purely physical player. He's big, strong, and fast, and he can hit a ball hard. And so if he's lost any of that, I can't see him pulling it off, I'm afraid.
I think he's a handful, isn't he? That's what it is with Carroll. He will always make a nuisance of himself. He's very good at holding the ball up, bringing other players into play. Unfortunately, I don't think at Newcastle he has the players around him for that to be effective. I think he will always score goals, but yeah, just he's not around enough. And to answer your question about the season that we finished 5th again, I think there was a stubbornness there from the board about the recruitment policy that we had at the time, which is still pretty much in effect now, about buying young and cheap from France or from abroad, and then identifying players with potentially big sell-on value. I think Jose Perez is the most recent example for that. Getting 35 million for him from Leicester was good business, but leaves us horribly short because he scored whatever percent, a large percentage of our goals last season alongside Rondon, and now we have neither of those players. So it's a completely flawed transfer policy. I don't think necessarily going back in for Rondon would have been sensible, because rumour has it he was after crazy money, but we needed a proven Premiership goal scorer, and we bought a guy from Brazil allegedly for 40 million, although I think that's Newcastle's PR team being quite creative. He doesn't I like the look of him, but we need goals, and they're not coming. We can't score at home against Brighton. So I struggle with that transfer policy. I don't think it's effective. I don't think you can operate like that in the Premier League anymore. I think you have to. It's not all about spending money, but you have to spend it wisely, and we don't do either of those things.
It's quite interesting that the 4 players you named in that Newcastle squad were all cheap young players brought from abroad that just happened to explode. But it's again that's something that's more of a rarity than it is anything else. There's plenty of clubs trying to chase those players, and yeah, it's not going to happen every time or even half the time. It's going to happen once every 5, 6, 7 purchases if you're lucky. So
absolutely.
So I need to address this issue. Why do we think, Liam? Why do we think Villa's going down? What's your issue with John Terry? I mean, Dean Saunders.
No issue with John Terry. I don't see enough in their squad. I don't know. I don't like them. I make no secret of that. There's a weird thing there between Newcastle and Villa, but I don't think I see quite enough in their squad. Again, I don't think for a whole season, looking at between now and May, they pick up some injuries. I think they are really in trouble. They've made a half-decent start, I suppose. Where are they in the table now? They're kind of
bottom 3.
I need to look at that.
I think they're in relegation.
They are bottom 3. Yeah. I don't know. Can you? I mean, standout players at Villa are
struggling.
That
tells you a lot that you can't name anybody who you think would stand out.
You look at the standout. One of the standout players from last season is the one putting the goals in for Chelsea at the moment.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I think that's very important for Villa. I think last year they had Abraham, who's now leading the line for the tops, and Twinzebe from United, who watching a bit of, and he looks great. I think it's key for them if they taste those or not.
They've spent 130 million quid, which is a lot of money.
That worries me when you look at what happened to Fulham last season.
Exactly.
And we're still sitting here going, who's their best players?
Yeah.
I do worry for Villa. I think maybe getting up too soon and then on panic by into place. I stay up.
I agree.
So
they were
I'm
my
look-
pick as well. I went on the sheet earlier. I instantly thought of Aston Villa. They've signed something like 12, 13 players for £130 million. Done, like we've said, exactly the same as Fulham. And the players they've bought, they're not proven Premier League players. You know, they're taking risks on the strikers, on the midfielders. Tom Heaton's a good signing. He's a steady goalkeeper. Matt Targett from Southampton again. Paid £14 million for a player who wasn't playing at Southampton. £15 million on a kid from Man City. They've splashed the cash, but I'm not sure they've done it on the right people, unfortunately.
I've got to say, I'm looking through their squad now, and you look at strikers. There's no one there really that I recognise. They've got Jota, who is a name I remember, but I think that might be from Match of the Day this season. But there's no one down there that I'd say is a goal scorer. They look a bit stronger in the field, but then you've got someone like Henry Lansbury. If he was really Premier League quality, would he not have established himself up here by now? He's had plenty of attempts. He got a few games out for Arsenal. He came up. I'm pretty sure he came up with Middlesbrough when they came up. Jack Grealish, he's still there. Again, he's completely cool, although he's only 24. And there's a player that I know from being a Football Manager fan, but also from being a Zimbabwe fan, is Marvelous Nakamba, who has a brilliant name, and he's a bit of a tough tackling midfielder. So they've got some decent names. They've got a decent look in midfield, and you look at James Chester, who's been there for a while. He's a Steve.
Yeah, he's a good player. Yeah. Really good footballer.
So they do very much seem like that mishmash of odd Premier League players that is destined to fail. Though you get this a lot. Villa did it themselves when they got relegated last time with Mika Richards and others, Jolien Lescott, who just had given up. So yeah, it's not looking great. Although I've got Norwich going down. I've got to say, and I don't sit here and I don't watch Premier League games every season. I watch Chelsea games, that's about it. And you rate teams. And while Norwich gave us a scare, I think we were open there, and I think they could have nicked more. And I wasn't that impressed. I think the goals they got were very much against the run of play, and I feel that we should have scored a lot more. Of the teams we've played, we've played decent teams, but I think Norwich were flat, and I don't see, it's another team, I don't see any players there that are standing out to me. I don't know if I'm the only one that's saying that, or if you guys agree with me, apart from Pookie, who hasn't really got a proven track. I believe, and again I don't know this for sure, but there was a journalist on one of the podcasters who's followed Pookie before, and he said that Pookie's performance this season are a complete shock to anyone that's seen him before.
Apart from last season. I mean, he scored like 30 goals last season in the Champ. He has got something.
Let me check it out. He's 29 years old now. You think this is going to be a form he's going to be able to sustain in the Premier League?
No, I just think he might have a year. People like Ricky Lambert, sometimes you get a player towards that age of 29, 30 who have a good year. You know, in Norwich have got a feel-good factor around them. They have got some good players. I just think that when you're looking through the Premier League, they've got, being that newly promoted club, very similar to Sheffield United, and the ethics that they've got around working hard with a bit of quality here and there. I think Norwich will have enough to stay up. I worry more for teams like Brighton. I mentioned Villa, Watford, I think are really bad this season, and I just think Norwich will have enough to stay up.
Watford, do you not think Watford have got the quality to be able to turn it round?
They look like they're in a rut to me, and the change of manager's not done anything. And the owners there will change the manager again within a couple of months if it's not working, and this could be the year that it doesn't work.
Yeah, I'm with Chris on that. I have Watford on this to go down. I just think any team loses 8-0 has underlying issues.
Yeah.
There's other stuff going on there that maybe we don't know about behind the scenes. It's like, I think a long way, especially if you're changing manager often as they do. So far it's worked, but now they're going backward, going back to it'll catch up with them. It could be this year.
I agree. Yeah, definitely, I agree.
People like Delafeu, I think he's a great player, but he's a bit temperamental. Is he up for a fight? You know, or Christmas? Is he going to be given last season? Deeney, he's injured at the minute. I think they really need him, even though I don't really like him. But, you know, I think they need somebody like that in. I worry for them. I worry for any team that capitulates. You know, when you look at what Norwich did, who I agree with Chris, I think Norwich will stay up. They had a real goal at Liverpool and Man City, and they managed to get the win. City. Norwich have also got Jamal Lewis, who, as a Northern Ireland supporter, is one of my favourite players in the whole world at the minute. He's been playing for a couple of seasons now, and he's adding a bit of attacking dynamism that he didn't have on our flanks. I think he's a proper, really.
Yeah, he has really stood out. Buendia as well looks a really good player for Norwich. I didn't mention him before, but he looks like he could be better than Norwich. He could move if Norwich struggle. He could be one that a club higher up take a chance on.
All right, so we talked about Villa and Norwich. There's one new promoted team we've left out, and that is Sheffield United. Now they were accused by, I can't remember, what was it, Danny Murphy that said they played Route 1 football.
Yeah, Danny Murphy or Danny Mills, one of them.
One of our brilliant pundits that totally deserve to be calling matches. And anyone that has watched Sheffield seasons knows that's the exact stuff they play, and they are bringing these. And I still don't fully understand what it is, but the overlapping centre backs, where the two midfielders all drop back and the centre backs go forward, and the whole point of it is that it's moving a player in a position that you're not expecting, and it catches the opposition off guard. And you'd sit here and you go, well, a trick like that, it's only going to last so long. But Stokes' long throw in lasted. It was working for years, and this has brought them up to. We've given them 2 successive promotions. So, Chris, being our lower league expert, what's your thoughts on the Sheffield United? Have you been able to see them play much, or?
I was at Bramall Lane last night, bizarrely, to see them get knocked out of the League Cup against Sunderland. But they didn't make 10 changes. I've saw them a lot last season. They're a really good team. Chris Wilder's a manager I've got a lot of time for. They're not long ball merchants at all. He's got the right players in the right positions. Everybody knows the job. They work hard. I know it's the phrase that a lot of people use, this overlapping centre backs, but it works really well. And all it means is the centre back just come out a bit further up the pitch and the full back sit in, and it works well because it catches teams out. You know, it's something different. It's worked really well for them. I don't think they'll do it too much this season. They've already had some great results. Winning at Everton last week was a fantastic result for them. How many points have they got? They've got 8 points from 6 games. I mean, they'd have snapped your hand off for that start at the beginning of the season. They've got Liverpool this weekend, which is basically 3 points down the drain, but after that they've got games coming up that they can probably pick up more points from. And like I said about Norwich, they've just got a buzz about them. They've got that hunger for the Premier League that some of the teams who have been there 2-3 years haven't got anymore. And I do fancy Sheffield United to stay up this year.
Brilliant. So no one's got Sheffield United going down then?
No.
I have to say, I really like Chris Wilder. You know, I watched a lot of Sheffield. I read things, but any press conference he does, they seem to be trying to question what's it like being in the Premier League today, and he's very quick to not go down that route. You know, he's not here just with stars in his eyes. He's here to win. He's here to do well. I think somebody tried to give his team credit a few weeks ago for working hard, and he's like, well, that's the bare minimum. We need to be a good footballing team.
Yeah.
Just today, I saw his press conference. His players, he's running around looking for shirts at the end of the game. You know, they're there to compete on a level playing field. We're here to win. We're here to be taken seriously. I really like how he comes across. You know,
he's a good guy. I am actually at a lot of them press conferences you've seen. He is like that when the cameras aren't rolling. You know, he talks to you straight. Last night we did post match after the game, and he was fuming last night that they'd been knocked out. He just wears his heart on his sleeve. And he said at the beginning of the season, he says, yeah, it's great to be going up against Jurgen Klopp and Pep Guardiola, but he wants to beat them. Yeah. He doesn't just want to go and shake their hand, he wants to beat them. And if he can't beat them this time, he wants to beat them next year. And he wants to learn off them because they're the top of their game. And so he wants to learn off the best to make himself the best. I think I'm amazed nobody's come along and tried to take him out of Sheffield United, to be honest, because his record is incredible. He got Northampton promoted, then moved to Sheffield United, got 2 promotions in 3 years from League One to the Premier League, and they've started well this year. He's just a manager that he's got something about him, and maybe if Sheffield United struggle a bit, somebody will come and have a go. But I don't know. I think he's still got a future. Possibly a bigger club. Maybe he falls into the same Sean Dyche mould. Dyche doesn't seem to get the next big job, but he is a very, very good manager, and it's good to see that he's in the Premier League now.
It does feel a bit like it's the patting him on the head and going, "Oh, aren't you a good team? Well done." Off you go. It was a similar thing happened to Blackpool when they came up. It was all this, aren't they great, aren't they? And every game, and it wasn't just Chelsea. It was
with Barnsley as well. We went to
mid-table team,
Yeah.
you get this stat of the squad only cost £48.
Yeah.
They're really cheap compared to, and they insert Everton or
Yeah.
someone like that.
Yeah.
I, as a fan of one of these clubs, I think I'd be a bit put out. It's not great, and you said it happened to Barnsley as well.
We got that where I won in the Premier League. Isn't it great? You've got all these trips to the big grounds and all that. You get all that, but it's just one of them things that happens in football. It's just the other thing that I was going to mention about Wilder and Sheffield United. The one thing he has done well is that if they get relegated, he's brought in players who will make them a top 2 Championship team to bounce straight back. He's brought in players like McBurney and Musa, who in the Championship will be fantastic. They've already proven in that level, so he knows that if they go down, they'll have a very good chance of coming back up. And sometimes that works best for teams. To go up, come down, bounce straight back, and then stay up. Burnley did it. Stoke did it years ago. Charlton did it. That was the Bolton did it. That was the model that seemed to work better. Was to go up. If you got relegated, make sure you had a team capable of bouncing straight back up, and not a squad of players who wouldn't fancy the Championship. Basically, look at Stoke. Teams like that, look at Sunderland. These players who we've signed, he feels will get them straight back up should they fail this time around.
Brilliant. So we've all locked in who we think's going to go down, and we're looking at Sheffield United as being a surprise package. Chris, you've got down here that you're quite excited to see Burnley in the new season as well. What's your thinking behind that?
That Burnley are a very good football team. And last year was a bit of a blip. The first 6 months of the season when they were in the Europa League, it knocked them off the stride. I can't remember the start, but the second part of the season form was top 4 form last year. And they've started this year pretty well again. They've only lost 2 out of 6 games. At home, they're a very hard team to beat. And I think they'll be 7th, 8th, possibly. It wouldn't surprise me, I know, it's a bit weird, if Burnley finished above Manchester United this year. Genuinely. I generally think they've got that in them to get them enough points at home and pick up points away that they could finish 7th or 8th. One place maybe above a Manchester United or even a Chelsea. I just like what he does. I think Sean Dyche is an incredible manager because obviously we're going to the football club a lot, and it's not just what you see on the pitch. What he's done to burn the football club off the pitch is incredible. Their new state-of-the-art training ground is all him. He designed it. He had. Apart from laying the bricks, it had something to do with everything all the way along, from them being a mid-table Championship club to a mid-table Premier League club, and he deserves a lot of credit.
Why do you think Dyche hasn't been picked up then? Do you think it's his abrasiveness, or do you think he wants to stay at Burnley and finish up his project, or what do you think's happening there?
I don't. I see the lads as well, but I just think he's not trendy enough for some teams. I look at teams like Everton, who went and got Marco Silva in. Marco Silva, who got Hull relegated, even though he put a bit of fight up, got sacked at Watford. He managed Olympiacos, who were the biggest team in Greece. It's like managing a Liverpool, or a City, or a Manchester United in this country. He's never really done anything, and yet they went for him rather than Sean Dyche. When surely, if the state Everton were in, you want somebody who's got a proven track record of building a football club. Bring Sean Dyche in, give him 5 years. He would make them a top 6 club regularly.
This is also Everton who went for Sam Allardyce, so.
But again, Allardyce to me, I know people will disagree, but Allardyce to me is a better manager than Marco Silva. Proven. He's actually a proven Premier League manager.
Liam, what are your thoughts on Allardyce as a manager?
Well, it's an interesting comment. Yeah, I guess if you look at track records and so on, then you'd have to say that Silva's struggling and Allardyce always kept teams up, always established them. It's open to interpretation, I guess, but I don't think Silva will last the season, and I think they would do well to get someone like Dyche. I don't think they'd go for an Allardyce kind of character now at this point, but it's an interesting comment. I think you're right to say that Silva feels like a sort of fashionable choice, and someone like Dyche feels like he's a bit too. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is about Dyche. I think you're right to say that Burnley are a good team, and I feel the same about Bournemouth as well. I had them down as I think it would be much of a surprise, but in terms of being a surprise package, I think Eddie Howe's done an amazing job there, and I put them two in a similar kind of category there of 2 English managers that I think, I do put them above the Pulises and the Allardyces and the Pardis. I think they're doing great work.
The thing is, we sit down and we talk about Burnley, they're actually quite a good team. We are forgetting that they're in the Europa League last season, so it's not like this is they've come out of nowhere to be playing well.
Oh, exactly.
They are an established team, so we should expect it. And they had last season, they had the toll that Europa League often takes on teams, especially teams with smaller squad like Burnley. This season, I wouldn't be surprised if they did go there and challenge the top 6.
I just think there's a very good chance they could finish 7th or 8th this year. They've done it before. They finished 7th one year. You know, there's no reason why they can't. They're probably a stronger squad now than they were back then. And Chelsea aren't where they were. Manchester United aren't where they were. Yes, there's Leicester now. Yes, there's Bournemouth now. But it means that they will be in there, win the mix, I think, come April, May time. I could quite easily see them finishing 7th or 8th.
Just to call back to the Marco Silva comment, do you think there was a part of we tried to get him and failed, so we want him now? Because they tried to get him when he was doing well with Watford, and Watford refused to let him go. And it was very soon after that things started to slip.
Yeah.
Do you think it was that idea of we went in for him, you wouldn't let us have him?
Yeah.
The performances, they let the performances go because in a lot of people's eyes and a lot of journalists said this at the time that the players stopped performing for him because they knew he didn't want to be there, and they sort of he got a free one there.
Yeah, I do. I think it's an ego thing, probably from the chairman. To be honest, he wanted him. He didn't like being told he couldn't have his man. Eventually, went back and got him without actually looking at the bigger scale, without actually understanding how the football. Because I don't think he was Ken Wright's appointment, was it? Is it what's he called, the Everton chairman?
Is it Ken Wright?
No, the
It
new
was Ken Wright. I don't think he's there anymore.
No, it's the new owner though, isn't it? Is it the guy who bought into the club, Ken Wright? He's got a foreign sounding name. Can't remember his name, sorry. But he came in with his money and he wanted a new manager. He wanted somebody a bit more flamboyant, a bit more trendy. And I think he didn't like being told no. So then obviously they've gone back and got the man in without actually doing due diligence and saying, well, what actually has he achieved in his career and who else could we have got? Because Ronald Koeman probably would have Everton in a better shape now had they left him in charge for another 12 months than Marco Silva's got them in, given that Marco Silva's probably spent 100 million plus in that time. I mean, Marco Silva spent 40 million on Alex Iwobi. Is there anybody on this pod who thinks that's a good transfer?
No.
Exactly.
Brilliant. Is there anything anyone else has got to bring to the table before we wrap up?
No, thank you.
No. Brilliant. So, going to wrap up there then. Thank you, Chris, and Liam for coming on. I hope you've enjoyed yourselves.
It's good.
Yeah,
Good chat.
it's been good.
Enjoyed it, thank you.
If anyone has any social media links or anything that they would like to plug them now. No? Brilliant. And we'll call it a day then. I will call my own outro once I've let you guys go because you have families, other such stuff to deal with, so I won't keep you while I'm on about Twitter, YouTube, the usual guff. It's been great having you guys on, and hopefully we'll get to do this again, maybe after the January transfer window or sometime then.
Cool.
Yeah, okay.
Sounds good.
Yeah, brilliant.
And
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for hosting.
cheers. I've struggled a little bit, but we'll muddle through. It's fine. And goodbye. So I'm recording this bit while I'm doing the editing process. I don't want to bore the guys, so I decided to record it at a later date. It's the outro bit that I do at the end of every show. So social media links, you can find me at Brazier25 on Twitter and Instagram. You can find the Life Junkies on Twitter on _Life Junkies and on Facebook at TheLifeJunkies25. You can find all our blogs, podcasts, videos at thelifejunkies25.wordpress.com. And you can find back episodes of this podcast on YouTube. If you are listening on SoundCloud, you won't find copies on there because basically we can't afford it. So it's all on YouTube. Also on YouTube there will be a video up. And if you are watching on YouTube, please like, share, subscribe, comment, whatever. It all helps us to grow as a podcast. So cheers guys and goodbye.